This video is sponsored by MPB. I've noticed something about the photography community in particular over the last few years, and that is that by and large they seem to be quite a solitary bunch. It seems to me that a lot of photographers act quite threatened of each other. They're very protective of their patch and they keep their secrets close to their chests. And if one of their number rises above the rest, too many seem way too willing to jump up and pull them down a peg. I don't think this is a problem limited to the photography community though. In fact, I think a lot of artists can often be quite threatened of other artists who also do that thing that they do. Too often they see themselves in direct competition with their fellow artists, and so they withdraw and become quite isolated and solitary. I get why. I think a lot of us have this scarcity mentality that we're all going after the same jobs and trying to put our work in front of the same audiences, and there's only so much attention or money or success to go around, and so we do start to get very competitive with each other. And some of us have historical reasons why we withdraw and pull back, because we feel we've been used by other more ambitious, less scrupulous artists in the past as they're trying to climb the ladder aggressively, and that stuff hurts. So let's get the caveats out of the way before we talk about this. Of course, it's okay to have a few healthy boundaries in place. Maybe it's okay to keep those processes that you're using for your current project to yourself until you're finished with that project. Being prudent is only sensible after all, and it's still wise to be discerning about who you share your processes with and who you give your time to. However, with all that said, if you feel that adversarial attitude pervading in everything that you do, and if you find yourself becoming suspicious and withdrawn and isolating yourself from other artists because of the imagined competition, I think you're losing out on one of the greatest joys of the artist's journey. But the title of this video is why I think we should be competing with each other as artists. You see, I think the problem is that we've lost the real meaning of the word competitive. Compete, competition, competitive, those words conjure up in our minds this idea of us versus them. But I looked up the etymology of the word compete, where the word actually comes from, and I was surprised by what I found. It actually comes from the Latin word petere, meaning to seek or to go after or to aim at, and com meaning together. So in the truest sense of the word, compete and competition and competitive, rather than having this idea of us being suspicious and separate of each other and this us versus them idea, in the truest sense of the word, competition means seeking together. As artists, we're all after the same things after all. We all want to find our honest creative expression. We're all trying to develop our skills and find our audiences. And what would happen if instead of seeing our fellow artists as people to beat or get ahead of or overcome, we saw them as potential friends and journey partners where we could support each other and actually champion each other's work? I recently watched a documentary on Steven Spielberg, and in the early part of the film it talks about this group of directors who were dubbed the movie brats and included well-known young filmmakers like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, Brian De Palma and Francis Ford Coppola. And as if to prove the point of what great friends these young directors were, there's this great bit of footage towards the beginning of the documentary where they're all playing pool over at someone's house, and Spielberg is lining up a shot and he's directing George Lucas, who's holding this old video camera, and telling him, put it on the surface of the table, I'm going to hit the ball towards the camera and you're going to lift it away at the last second. And he gets the timing wrong and the ball just crashes into the lens. And even though these fledgling directors were all trying to crack their way into Hollywood at the same time and could easily have seen each other as the opposition, you can tell that they were genuinely great friends. They supported each other. They collaborated on projects together. They critiqued each other's work, often harshly, but always helpfully. And they were cheerleaders for each other when one of them succeeded. That whole group became successful, making some of the biggest movies of all time. And I wonder how much of their success they would attribute to the support and feedback they got from those creative friendships. There are only so many spots for top directors in Hollywood, especially back then, but far from holding them back, it seems that the encouragement they got from each other made those directors great in their own rights. There are lots of great examples of creative friendships between secure artists who could easily have been adversarial with each other and treated each other with suspicion. J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were both writing their respective fantasy epics, The Lord of the Rings and the Narnia Chronicles, at around the same time to sell to the same potential audience. But instead of seeing each other as competition, the Inklings, as they became known, met once a week in a pub called the Eagle and Child in Oxford to share a meal, talk about their books, bounce around ideas, and to support each other to make the best work they could. Lucian Freud and Francis Bacon were both painters working in London in the 40s when they met. They became instant friends and artistic collaborators, and they were reportedly close for over 25 years, intensely critiquing and unfailingly supporting each other in their work. In the end, they fell out with each other, as friends often do, but neither could underestimate the value of that friendship to their work for so many years. Actors Judi Dench and Maggie Smith have had an incredibly close friendship for the last 60 years, even though they were often both going for the same roles in a limited acting marketplace. But their bond came first, and they didn't let the industry of their art put them on an adversarial footing. They chose instead to support each other, celebrate each other, and build each other up. Famously, in the photography world, you had Gary Winogrand and Joel Meyerowitz working the same street corners in New York at the same time, going on daily walks together to photograph because they enjoyed each other's company. There was none of the typical, I don't want to share my locations, or did you get a shot of the same moment as me and is it better? Their friendship helped them make better work, stretched their thinking, and gave them a companion on their respective creative journeys. For the last 3 years of living down in London, and even now when I go down and visit, I had this sort of friendship with Joshua Jackson, who you've heard from many times on this channel. And early on, we quickly fell into this pattern of walking far, and sometimes talking, and sometimes making images, and always drinking too much coffee. There was never any concern or suspicion that one of us was trying to use the other to get ahead somehow. We both have very different focuses and styles, and when one of us succeeds, there isn't even the slightest hint of jealousy, only celebration. Creative friendships like this are gold. I have learned so much from Josh, and I hope he's learned things from me as well. And I will sing his praises to anybody who gives me any time and listens. And I want to see him go as far as he possibly can, because I deeply believe in his talent. And that's why if ever I visit a new city, I always make a point of organizing a meetup. It's not for me. It's not so you can come and meet me and I'm some sort of weird celebrity. It's nothing like that. I always make a point right up front of those meetups to make a little speech. This is something like, I'm obviously going to leave and go home after this. And it's been great to meet you all. But I think the best thing that can come out of this time is that you meet each other. You're from the same city. You do the same sort of thing. And some new creative friendships might be born out of today. It genuinely warms my heart when I hear from people who say to me, I came out to a meetup in London or Paris or Lisbon or Amsterdam, and on that day I met these other 2 or 3 people and we still shoot together regularly, even years later. And the friendships we formed are incredibly precious to us as we support each other on this creative journey. It always makes me happy when I come across groups of creatives who choose to band together and to journey together. And I knew one group of street photographers in London, and I had nothing to do with forming them. They just were friends that I knew who used to regularly go out and shoot together. And they would critique each other's work and share each other's work on their platform, and they would take care of each other in really practical ways. They often go out and photograph the protests together, which can be very chaotic and dangerous situations, but they're always looking out for each other and they're always in contact on their phones to make sure that they're all safe. And recently, when one of their number was attacked and had his camera smashed, they jumped online as a group and crowdfunded enough money so that he could buy all his camera gear back. That's a group of photographers competing in the truest sense of the word, competing, seeking together, aiming at together, going after it together. We do ourselves such a disservice when we treat our fellow artists as a threat or adversaries all the time. We need to stop framing our creative journey and us against them terms, because it's going to rob us of the opportunity of good creative community. Maybe it's time to interrogate your own attitude around other artists, especially those who do that thing that you do. Are you isolating yourself because of a perceived rivalry? Maybe it's time to put that attitude to bed and step out with a more open heart, willing to connect, because I promise you, the person who will benefit the most from that move will be you. A little bit of news before I go. I'm starting to go around and give talks based on the content in my book, The Meaning in the Making, where I share a bit of my philosophy for the creative life. And the first of those talks is on the 22nd of October in York. So if you'd like to come along to that, I'll leave a link down below where you can book a ticket. They are very limited, so I wouldn't wait too long. And keep an eye on my social media platforms in general, because I'm hoping to travel around with these talks, not just here in the UK, but overseas as well in other countries. And I will hopefully be coming to a venue near you soon. And lastly, thanks again to MPB for sponsoring this episode. They're a great online platform for buying and selling used camera gear. MPB will appeal to two groups of photographers in particular, and the first are those who, like me, choose to buy used camera gear because they want to save a bit of money. When you buy through a reputable seller like MPB, not only will you get a fair price based on the condition of the gear that you're buying, but you will also get a 6-month warranty for peace of mind. And the second group are those photographers who just find that their shelves and their camera bags are just getting cluttered up with gear that they don't really get much use out of anymore. MPB will buy that gear from you. And I like the idea that it then gets loaded onto their platform, where it stands a chance of winding up in the hands of another creative who's going to make great work with it. Getting a quote for your gear on their platform is really quick and easy, and if you're happy with the price they're offering you and you accept, it's just a case of packaging up that gear, printing off the label they give you, and booking a courier who will come to your door to grab that gear, so you don't even need to make a trip to the post office. So whether you're on the lookout for a used camera body or lens, or you find that you're just collecting too much gear and you need to sell some of that stuff on, MPB are a great option. I'll leave a link down below. Go along and check them out.